Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the pleasure of working on a Shakespeare baitcasting reel. I believe this is the Agility. Yeah, it's the Agility. And this one was kind of full of dirt coming in. I did my best just to kind of hose it down. We'll do a little bit more cleaning when we get the spool and that out of there. But I thought I would take a moment to show you how to take this reel apart, service it, get it cleaned up, and get it going again. And it's a nice little bait cast. I'm not quite sure the value of the reel, but regardless, it's a nice kind of smooth running one. There's a little catch I'm noticing, probably a pawl catch or some dirt over here in the corner, so we'll take care of that as well. And for the most part, we'll get this one back out there fishing again. So one of the problems that you have with reels like this is you generally do not have replacement parts for them. Shakespeare is part of the pure fishing line these days. And it's kind of in the value branding area as far as how they set up their go-to-market strategy. But they also have the Abus, they have the Flugers, and some of the other brands that they've purchased over time, Mitchell and the like. And so Shakespeare is kind of relegated to the off-the-shelf kind of sales. You see them in Walmart and places like that. And the higher ends would be the Abu Revos. Somewhere in the middle you would have a Fluger President, I guess, in terms of that. So I start by taking off the handle just to get it out of the way so I can go clear some of these other pieces. And I like to start by thanking our first responders and essential personnel and all the folks that are keeping us safe during the pandemic. You truly are our hometown heroes, and your efforts to keep us all safe during the pandemic certainly is appreciated. All right, this one has a mag function to it. As you tighten the mag, it pushes the mags closer to the spool and puts on more resistance. And as you release the mag, or reduce this, it pulls the mags away from the spool and offers less. And there's a variability in there in scale. To take this side plate off, there's 3 screws, but there's also an additional screw hiding behind the spool here. So we're going to deal with that next. In order to do that, you have to remove the non-gear side plate. To do that, you just grasp it and push down about a quarter of a turn, and that will free it up and then pull it out. And here's what I was talking about. You have a series of magnets here, and as you turn the wheel on this side, it's moving this assembly in and out. So that will provide the variability in the magnetic field that's being forced there. You don't need to do anything with the mag side. It is always a good practice to clean and to put fresh oil onto the bearing. We're going to put that into our parts tray. I use the bottom of a jug, and the parts tray holds all the pieces and parts that I take out. Next then is going to be the spool. We mentioned that there was some dirt and junk on there, so while I have the spool out, I'm just going to wipe that down. Just like that. And when I go to reinstall, I'll put a little bit of grease onto the tip here that's going to go into the bearing. I'll also put some grease onto the shaft that's going to go through the working side. And we have a spool bearing on this one. I'm going to oil that. And oftentimes I get a question about that spool bearing. How do I get it off if it's pinned in? Well, that pin is a roll pin. It does come out. Just kind of looking for my tool on the bench at the moment. I don't seem to have it, but they make a little tool where you can center it. I'll do this one as a separate video. They make it where you center it and then you push that pin through. That'll allow you to remove the bearing, and then you can come back and reinstall the pin with the reverse process. Fortunately, I don't have that at my hand at the moment. Okay, now you can see there's a screw back here in the case, and that's not uncommon. A lot of manufacturers hide the screws back there. They like to keep a clean frame on these bait casters, and they tend to do their best to hide the screws, and that's one way to attach it. Now I know from experience, because I just did another one of his, that there's a short screw here, a long screw in the back, and 2 equal screws on this side. And if you're doing this reel, you want to make sure that you know where the locations are of those screws, because if you try to put them in the wrong place, they won't work. There's 2 tension washers I'm taking off the reel. There's a plastic collar and a little thread that goes on top of that. And then internally we have a gear sleeve ferrule and a instant anti-reverse. So we'll get to that when we remove the rest. We took one of the screws out from the back. We're going to take the screws out of the side plate here. And as you're removing this side plate, there are 2 yoke springs inside that put the pressure to return the pinion or spool gear. When it trips, you just want to make sure that you don't lose those as you're disassembling the reels. So just be aware that they are there. Keep the pressure on the side plate like I'm doing here. You'll also note I'm wearing a plastic glove here, a latex glove. I prefer to keep the greases and junk off my hand, especially when I'm doing cleaning and the like, and this seems to fit the bill. Alright, so the 3 screws here are out, the one on the back is out. We can now lift the side plate up. These are the 2 screws springs I was talking about. They ride on posts, so get them into your tray right away. You don't want to lose them. And Joe, one of the things I'll mention in doing your first reel is this main gear was on backwards. That's why you weren't getting any kind of drag working there. Okay, we're going to remove that whole stack then. Clean underneath. Inside this reel is a whole lot cleaner than what I expected to see with all the dirt on the other side. We have our carrier here. This is going to trip the bail spring, so I'm going to just put some oil on that. These are Teflon gears. They don't need to be lubed. I did want to remove the yoke assembly here to make sure I clean the old grease on that. When you do the yoke assembly, make a note which way is which. So the slotted side of the gear goes to the spool, and there's usually a ramp on here. Yep. So you'll see a ramp section on both sides of this. That's where the jack pushes down. That goes in. So if you get disconnected and you can't figure out what it is, remember that. Alright, I'm just going to put a little bit of grease onto the main gear. I'm going to reinstall that. Slotted side in. Trying to do this for the camera, sometimes the balancing just doesn't work. Let's try this again. Okay, got the slots right. Alrighty, on the main gear setup, you have an HT100 drag washer there. It's in good condition. You don't need to do anything with that. Here's your click ratchet and a little spacer. So your click ratchet goes in first. You have a rectangular ratchet, and it fits snugly onto that gear shaft there. You need to make sure that it's not off center there. That spacer goes next. You don't need to put any grease onto the drag washer. This one has no wear on it actually. So I don't know, this one came in really dusty and dirty. I'm thinking maybe it was sitting in a shed or something for quite some time. But whatever the situation, it's going to be all cleaned up and ready to go now. Putting fishing reel grease, this happens to be Penn Precision reel grease, but any fishing reel grease will do, onto most of the teeth on the main gear. Then we'll reinsert that main gear. Next up then is the compression washer that works the pressure onto the drag. Just taking the sleeve off now. I'll put that back on. Now, there's 2 sides of this instant anti-reverse. This is important to note. One side does not have the metal, the other side does. It's very easy to turn this one upside down, in which case your reel won't turn. And it's important to note here that the chrome side faces outward. That's just something I noticed when I came in on this. And I'm going to go reinstall that in the case before I put the case back onto the reel. So we've made sure it was clean. We've oiled the trip mechanism. We've removed the yoke, greased up the pinion gear. We're going to reinstall the springs. And we're going to put the side cover back on. Of course, I put it in and it came right out. So one of the things you might want to do there is put a little bit of grease onto the outside. The grease almost acts like a glue, and it should hold it in place temporarily. Let's try this again. And that's how your side plate goes on, just like that. We mentioned that you have 2 medium screws. Those go here and here. You have a short screw which goes to the front, and you have a long screw that hides behind the spool. So I'm going to tighten this one up. I've placed the other one below, but I'm not going to go tighten that one up. I'm going to come back and put that over here where our line guide guard is. That has a small Phillips head. You can either go for a micro screwdriver or you can use a flat blade that goes on the through slot of this screw. Now I'll come back and do this one. Now while I have this, I did notice there was a little bit of a trip going over here. I don't know if it was just dirt or grease or whatever. Seems to be a little bit of dirt in that channel there, so I'm just going to use a pick. Just going to make sure that's cleaned so that it doesn't hang up again. That's one of the problems when you get dirt or sand in a reel. Make sure you check the worm drive in the lake. And that might be a function of a worn pawl as well. And unfortunately, you're not going to find those pieces and parts now. Okay, take that spool. Remember, we greased the shaft on the spool on both sides. The long nose end, if you will, goes in. Take the side plate here. We've already oiled that bearing. Tighten that up. Now we can come back and we can put that ferrule on. It's a plastic grommet, if you will, and then there's a metal ferrule which goes on top of that. And we had our 2 tension washers here. Those provide the sensitivity on the drag pressure from the star adjuster. I'll go ahead and put the star adjuster on. A little tension washer to, oops, got ahead of myself. Now that's where the value of a part tray comes. That long screw that they've been hiding there, well, it was hiding in my basket. So maybe that's its nature. It's just going to hide. Let's get that last long screw in then. That's why I like a parts tray. If the parts tray is empty at the end of the exercise, then you know you've done your job. Although I did hear of a definition once of a good mechanic was that he knew how to take the things apart, put them back together, and hide any remaining pieces and parts. So, I guess that's an inside story from a mechanic. Okay, just looking for my 10mm wrench again. I'll tighten this down now. Generally, if you can align the point with the screw hole, you will get the cap aligned properly for the screw. Okay, tighten down the drag. I'm going to give that a turn. I'm guessing I'm pretty high on that. There we go. Okay, make sure that the free spool works, which it does. This one actually casts nicely. Make sure it trips back. It does. Make sure that your line guide mechanism is working, and I think taking that dirt out of that worm gear just freed everything right up. If you want to make sure, just throw a little bit more oil on there. I don't recommend grease on worm gears, but that's it. That's your Shakespeare Agility bait casting reel, and that's how you take it apart. You service it, you put it back together again, and you send it out fishing. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you like this, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification button, as you'll see everything that I post. If you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, please leave them in the comments section. I'll be happy to try and answer them for you. It can be on any reel. And finally, if you have a reel that needs to be serviced like Joe, then if you send me an email on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with repair information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.